that are filled in as the bill makes progress through through each chamber and to the governor. And citizens or anybody can comment on the bill at any time. And this will also go into a email system similar to what I showed before that the league maintains. But this one, you can go in anytime and comment on this bill to your legislators. So it'll ask you for your address and zip code and such, if you want to make a comment at any time. Or you can find their personal email, well, their legislative email addresses and carry on a conversation with them. Below that is a bill history, and it shows from the initiating of the bill in a committee, in this case, the first reading, which means it was introduced into that committee, the State Government, Tribal Relations and Elections Committee. Then it tells the public hearing occurred on January 22. And so that history is added to during the course of the session all the way down. So it can get fairly long because it goes through the Senate first, and then it has to go through the House, and then it has to go to the Senate again because there were amendments on it. And then all the committee hearings that were done, all the materials, there's little green word links in here that go to the committee, what the committee saw about the bill. And there's way more information than most people want to investigate. However, if anybody's really interested in an issue, they can understand fully what's going on in the legislature right here and all the gory detail of sausage making. Below that are some significant documents. Down at the bottom, I hope everybody can see, there's a link for the original bill. So it'll be just the bill as it comes to originally to the legislators in courier text, and sometimes anywhere from 2 to 100 pages. And then as it goes through the process, there may be a substitute bill and an engrossed bill, which means they incorporate all the amendments and the bill as it passed the legislature near the bottom. On the right side of these columns are reports written by the staff of the legislature that explain the bill in a little more normal English and condense things down a bit and give some background often. Give the background on what happened so far in the legislature on the bill, who supports it, and when I say support it, during the hearings, people make comments supporting or opposing a bill. So they summarize that too, who made which comments. And below that, there's a link to the fiscal note, which tells what's the monetary impact of the bill and in tax receipts and expenditures over typically, well, 4 to 6 years. I think sometimes even longer. Then there's all the amendments that were made. I think these are, well, I guess it's committee too, floor and committee amendments that were made, and who sponsored or who introduced the amendment and whether it was adopted or not. And you can go into here and see what the amendment was and see how it went. This is the bottom of this bill information page. There are, they keep videos of all the hearings in committee. Usually there's not, no videos of the floor votes, at least held here, but you can go into those videos and see what comments were made about the bill during the committee hearings, who opposed, who supported. And there are ways you can get to the information you're looking for, because sometimes these committee hearings are 2 hours or 3 hours long. So you just have to, I fast forward through to get to the bills that I'm interested in if I can't listen to them live. This is a big advantage, big benefit to me as an issue chair to understand what other people are saying about the bill that may not show up in the formal documentation that I showed above. I know this is a lot of information, and I can't even get to all of this, so I have to pick and choose what I do read, because I may have 10 bills that I'm tracking during the course of a session. On another page, and we'll go into this a little bit, but there's information on the each of the chambers, the Senate and the House. In this case, this is, well, let's see, where did I go? You can select the House or the Senate, and it's got a schedule of significant events coming up right in the middle. The arrow that I have on the right side there under bills, that just goes to the bill information page, and you enter a 4-digit number for any bill you're interested in. It goes through all the 4 pages we just looked at. And then you can set up bill tracking systems to focus just on the bills you're interested in, and a few other features. Once again, a very rich environment here that not everyone typically knows all the features, but I use what I can to make my work efficient, and you can too. If you do go into the backing up the House of Representatives, if you select the House of Representatives, it will give you some more information on them, such as a member directory. You can go to committees to see what committees are active in the House and who are serving, which legislators are serving on those committees. Some more information on the right-hand side. Just a lot of information, and it does look complicated perhaps, but it's with a little practice you can find things, and I'll try to help where I can to orient everybody. Now, another aspect of the league work is you probably know, because well, I guess you're not all league members. The league has specific positions on the issues that we advocate for. And those positions are documented in primarily 2 documents available on PDF for everyone. They're in the open section of our website under advocacy and league positions. So if you select that pull down menu, you'll see these links to these documents and a brief explanation of what they are. For Washington State, we have a program in action. So the league over the decades have taken positions on democracy issues, voting, also on environmental issues like climate change and water quality and forests and rivers. And so those are documented in here, also with the history of how we came up with those positions and the significance of why we came up with those positions. So the issue chairs use those specific positions to analyze the bills that come through. Of course, there's a lot of our own personality in how we do the analysis, but we must use those formal positions in our evaluation. This is not about how our personal feelings are about a bill, whether we think it should go through or not. It is about the league positions on it. These league positions, as I said, in some cases were formed over decades. And we do have ongoing processes to update those, but those take some time. It usually requires a formal study on the issue leading to a new position or a change in position or a refinement of a position. The same process goes through the league at the national level, the LWV US, and their positions, which do affect us, are documented in the impact on issues at the bottom of that page. Both of those have links. You can look at the PDFs. They're both about 60 pages long, but in the digital form, you can search on keywords. If you're looking for specific passages that for insight on how an issue would be viewed by the league, you can go in and say, search on climate, search on water, search on voting, and see what the formal positions of the league has. Now, I use both of these documents because they do cover some different territory. And the program in action that the Washington State prepares is more crafted towards issues relevant to Washington and the problems we have here. Of course, the National League is more on national problems, but I use the positions of both of those to craft how I evaluate the bills in the legislature. And you can take a look at these. As I said, anybody can. And if you're really energetic and want to join the team, there's a way to contact the action chair of the state league, Joan Lawson, and you can tell her what you're interested in, and we'll try to fit you into the to our lobby team. This was a follow-on that Cynthia Stewart prepared on just communicating good methods of communicating with the legislators. I assume you've been given a lot of thought, or you have given a lot of thought to this since you have your coffee and cards program and do other contacting. But what we are recommending here is if you you can make phone calls to the legislature, you can or to your legislators. Usually, your contact is going to be with those representing you. And you can have meetings, but it should take some pre-research. And this is probably nothing you don't already know, but they do have records that are voting records and records of bills they introduced. Those are available on the leg.wa.gov webpage, which I just went over. And maybe I should show you how you can get into that too if you're interested. And also understand the legislative process. And I was going to put a slide back in on that, but I think you probably understand that. A group like this probably does anyway. And you know how it's introduced and it goes into committee and it goes to the chamber floor and it's voted and it goes to the other chamber and goes through the same process. But this was Cynthia's recommendations on how to get your point across, especially if you're talking on the phone. But this also applies to an email you might send. The postcards may be a little different for that. But they would like to know who you are and where you live and why you're interested and what your issue is. And explain why it's important to your region and make a specific ask at the end of it, which I imagine you do with your postcards. Now, finally, I wanted to cover the hierarchy of influence and where I stand in this hierarchy and where maybe you stand. On issues of national interest or scope, the league at the US level must take a position. If we want to promote something that has national influence, we really need to go to the staff at the National League. And in my case, doing legislative work, it's Jessica Jones Caparel. Or her legislative staff. She has about 3 staff members too. I think she's out on maternity leave now, so it may be her staff. But the policy document that I touched on minutes ago, impact on issues, contains how they would look at an issue for us. But if last summer I signed on to a letter on Navy testing of audio system testing and explosive testing that was going to be done in and around off the coast of Washington, I think, that might affect the orca whales. And I wanted to take a position on that, but I had to coordinate with Jessica in this case because it was a Navy issue and that has national implications. So I just had to get her concurrence on that. If it's of state influence or scope, things, especially the best example is the legislation. I have the authority from the board of directors to talk to the legislators about things, write legislators. I don't have to get further approval for that. And as I said, I use the program in action primarily, along with the impact on issues, to formulate my positions. But I'm a trusted spokesperson for the league now on those issues. If a local league wanted to take a position on a statewide issue, they should contact the issue chair for that issue, and they're all listed on the webpage. However, the local leagues are perfectly legitimate to make commentary on issues of significance to the local league. And they should, however, coordinate with an action chair for that local league or the president of that local league, depending on how the local league is organized, to make sure we don't say something that is contradictory to another position the league has taken. And so that's what we're really trying to do here, is protect the good name and the confidence that citizens of this country have in the league that has been built over the last 100 years. We don't want to degrade that by making contradictory statements or statements that are in conflict with the positions formally taken by the league, especially things like nonpartisanship. All right, so that was the end of the formal bits. Now what I can also do is, if I've got this, I guess it's right here, and this isn't, I've got the Zoom screen is making things hard. Here we go. This is, I'm going to close that. This is the league webpage again. And I just wanted to go over things in here. The advocacy team, if you want to know who's advocating for what, there's Stony Bird, who will be talking to you next week, I guess I understand, and his bio, and the others doing healthcare in the case of Kim, public education. Anyway, so this just shows everybody on the lobby team. And our issue papers that we write at the beginning of the session, describing what we think is going to come up in the session, are here. That information will not go out of date so much, but the more interesting information will come up on the web pages later on. And the web page, well, the web pages are currently in work for the session. So the links to the web station, normally they'd be right in here, and this would be a link to a web page describing the bills going on in the session. I covered that in the slides before. There are, I showed you about us, this pull down menu going down to the league newsletters. That's where this is. You can subscribe and such. Let's see, there are, all the league positions are in here. I'm just showing you that it really is a web page you can use. I encourage you to root around a little bit to see what's there. You can contact, and then there's the members page that takes another login. You can, a member login that you'll have to take. Now, the other thing, were there any questions at this point that I could go over on the league web page? I'll take anything.
Marty, I have a question. I'm going to put the, if I can get it. I can't see if anybody else has their hand raised, but I do have a question. If we stick to the actions in the newsletter, we're not going to come in conflict with anything, any position where we run into conflict with another league. It's only if we have a local issue that we need to check. So I know that there are some people who work in other, for other environmental things in particular, and there will be some actions for us to do as a local league, but I have a feeling that when we check with you, because it is going to be environmental, that there's not going to be a conflict. And that person that I'm speaking about knows okay. What I'm talking about.
Yeah. And if the issue bleeds over into other leagues, then we do need to coordinate at the state level, usually. you could set up a relationship with the other local leagues, and then we can transfer that over to both of you and get confidence that you are coordinating. That every issue or every opportunity will have a different structure to it, I think. I see there's maybe some comments coming in. I'm not sure what's in there. There may be some written questions too. But what I was going to say is often a local league will have an issue that's understandable if we think about it, that would conflict maybe what we want to do. And I had to pull my punches a little bit last summer on an issue because the local league had, was in an area that depended on this issue. And they didn't want to lose credibility in their community by having the state league take a position that their local community opposed. And this was important because that small local league was still conducting candidate forums in their local community that included conservatives, liberals, and everybody, and they were participating. We did not want to mess up that relationship by taking a position that would make life difficult for that local league. That's the kind of nuance that we want to make sure we're attending to when the issue comes outside the local league. I would, if you're taking positions within your local league area, that's fine. I would still like to hear about it, what you're doing. And I would say definitely make sure the president of the local league. Carol, are you the president of the Skagit?
I'm not. I'm just the chair for the Skagit League of Women Voters Action Group.
Okay, yeah. So you're the person then. You're I think the person to coordinate all the action, and the action meaning positions that are taken.
Yeah. And I think we're going to stick pretty much to the legislative actions, as we kind of learn how to work within the league on this. I do have one more request for you before you close out your shared screen. Could you find an example of partnerships that the league has with other coalitions, and maybe the environmental one would be a good one to use and show on screen if you can?
Yeah, I'll do that here. And what Carol was talking about was you can find information, I think, I haven't been here in a while, and that's the challenge of doing a live demo, as you never really know what's going to happen on a web page. But so we, especially the issue chairs, depend on coalitions to gather information and get perspective on what other organizations are determining about an issue. In some cases, we want to take care not to step on another person, a coalition member's message, but we also, I'm not really an expert in climate change or water policy. I depend on the professionals, essentially, paid staff in some coalitions or other organizations. So I want to maintain a good relationship with them. But here's a list of coalitions that we are members of. For democracy, they have a couple. There's the Environmental Priorities Coalition in the Northwest.
Click on that one. Click on environmentally.
I will.
And we can see organizations. It's there someplace. I know I've seen it.
This is largely administered by the Washington Environmental Council, so their webpage is hosted there. And this is a brief notice of that coalition. This is and then what this coalition does is prepares 3 or 4 priority topics for legislation for that session. And so I participate in that coalition for the league, and we vote on what we're going to cover. Typically, there's not that controversial, but there's 6 coalitions that come in as a candidate, and we got to pare it down to 4. And that doesn't mean the other coalitions go away. I mean, the other issues go away. It's just that they are not part of the priority. So in this case, the Clean Fuel Standard, justice on transportation, and conservation works. I forget what this is. I think it's it really is focused on the budget shortfall and the tax system is what we're working on there. Even though that may not sound like environmental priority.
And somewhere in there, it'll show all of these organizations that are part of Washington Environmental Council, including League of Women Voters, Sierra Club, Zero Waste Washington. I saw it this morning. There we go. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, there's at the bottom.
Yeah. So this.
So there we are down here.
The idea that.
I guess it's a hot link, so maybe that goes somewhere. Yeah, back to the beginning.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so there, as I said, let's see that one. So all the coalitions are in here, and you can go in and dive in. There's a quick message there. So there's an answer. How much more time do we have for this, Carol?
Probably about 20 minutes, but I just wanted people to recognize that the League of Women Voters works not in isolation. The League works in concert with groups in all of these different areas across the state, and some of them are national organizations as well, so that the positions, really do represent Washington, a very broad sense.
And as far as the coalitions go, there's a wide variety of organizations in those many coalitions that we partner with. The League, of course, maintains scrupulous, nonpartisan positions. So we almost universally take positions on issues, not on candidates, not on representatives of our government. However, many of our coalition partners will take on their own, they'll make endorsements, of candidates during the election cycle, and that's okay. That's a separate event from how we participate with them. And if there ever was a position the whole coalition wanted to take on a candidate or a party, we would have to completely recuse ourselves. It would impair our ability to operate formally. And third, the coalitions typically understand that each of their members have a different vision and a different mission that they're pursuing, and we don't try to interfere with each other's mission. And we understand when an organization has to stand down from supporting an issue that the rest of the coalition might be taking, or a messaging that the rest of the coalition might prefer. And we sometimes just don't participate in that particular event. So that's how we try to keep our nose clean.
Okay, Marty.
Yes.
If you were to unshare your screen, I could see from the gallery view if there are any questions, because I think it's time to see if anybody has questions. And Mary Ruth, would you please unmute yourself and ask?
Question for Marty. Does the State League of Women Voters take positions and lend its support on things that are not state legislation, like agency rulemaking?
Yes, they will. And I take positions on hearings that are going on outside the legislation and such. And so we can't deal with everything going on. And I myself, I don't typically get into the rulemaking process because it's a bridge too far for me. And because I'm doing climate and energy, it tends to get very technical. I am not a professional in that, although I am an engineer. I'm not a lawyer, as people like to say, but especially our democracy side, since that is truly a core mission of the League, we'll get into more of the nuts and bolts of lawmaking with the legislator and the rulemaking staff. It's just that, a different style that we have to take based on, our competency. But for instance, a couple of years ago, we had one of the issue chairs that influenced Kim Wyman on how to do electronic voting. And she was hearing about one way to do it. And our issue chair did some research on security and convinced Kim Wyman not to go that direction.
Marty,
Yes.
I'll look for hands if someone else, and I see from Judy and Whitby. Go ahead, Judy.
Yeah, I'm still a little confused on who can speak for the league. I thought we were not supposed to speak for the league and under any circumstances. So if the local league takes a position, whether it's contrary to the state or it's the same as the state, how are we speaking for the league then?
They can speak, the local league in under the direction, shall I say, of their action chair, Carol in this case, and the president of the local league would probably want to know too, can take positions on issues that are confined to that local league. If there was a facility going in there that did not affect state policy, like a road construction or a new bridge maybe, or some other a dump going in, or not, or you can take a position. It's very helpful if you will align that position with the program and action document and get a PDF, search on that for every possible keyword to see what the policy that the state league is saying. That's a very safe position. Also do it for the National League, not to violate it. That's very safe. But you can do that without asking anybody's permission. Now, as I said, I would love to know about those things in case there was a nuance that hadn't been considered, or that I knew something was going on that might have a problem, but that is not a requirement. And so it's sometimes these are squishy ideas too. I mean, the boundaries can be a little fluid. And so it requires us to think about it. The other thing you can really do is a league member can go to the legislature, a committee hearing, and speak and say, I am with the League of Women Voters, and here are the position statements in our program and action that affect this issue, and read those position statements. What individual league members should not do is go to a committee hearing or another venue of some kind and say, I'm with the League of Voters, and here's how I feel about this bill. I don't want a coal terminal here. And well, that you're speaking for yourself with putting the decal of the league on it. And that's not what we hope will happen. There's another interesting nuance. Of course, I know we have some non-league members here, so I'd encourage you to join the league. But if everybody in the league wrote an email to their legislator saying, I'm a member of the league and this is what the position is, many of the legislators would say, well, everybody who said they were a member of the league, I'm just going to put all those into one bucket, and that's one vote for that issue. Whereas if you instead say, I am a member of this community and I don't like this, what's going on, or I hope you will take this action, that's one vote, one vote, one. Everybody gets every citizen voter gets their own vote, and it's not lumped together. So it's probably more powerful not to necessarily say you're a member of the league, because they'll tend to think, okay, all the members of the league are saying the same thing. So
if I'm the action chair for Whidbey Island and our local league decides to take a position, I can speak saying I am speaking for the Whidbey Island League of Women Voters.
Yep, if it's a local issue.
Right. If I've gone through all the things you just talked about, yes.
Yes, if it's a state issue,
Right.
we need to coordinate.
Right, but if it's I'm talking about a local issue.
Yeah.
Okay,
And just coordinate with your president or your action chair.
right.
And I'm seeing a couple of questions in the chat. First from Laura over in Benton Franklin. She'd like to know, how do you choose which coalitions to work with? And then I have another question after that. So
Well, they're the coalitions that are interested in the issues that the league is interested in, we
Okay.
have positions in. And there are also coalitions, well, that align with those positions well. And because we're not going to join coalitions probably that are opposing some position that the league has, that are, create, some organizations are created specifically to support or oppose an issue. If they oppose the issue that the league is for, that wouldn't be a good fit for a coalition, certainly. And so usually the coalitions, I think well, for the environment coalitions, as I said, I'm the league representative on the Environmental Priorities Coalition and also on the Northwest Energy Coalition. And those organizations have information that I need to give me perspective on what bills, what influence they will have on the state. It may not be, they may not have the same priority in the other organizations, but at least they have a perspective on things that then I evaluate. And I use that in my testimony and such. Same thing with the Northwest Energy Coalition. I need the information from the experts in those other organizations, but we don't join coalitions of clearly organizations that are opposing strongly held league values. We wouldn't join those organizations or those coalitions.
I'm going to encourage people to take a look at the League of Women Voters site, find that coalitions page, and just scroll down to what Marty showed us, all the different organizations that are part of the coalition that the league is a member of too. And I think you'll be very impressed and see that it's such a they're broad, and it reassures me that there's a lot of support and a lot of thought that goes into it. Another question, and I think I know the answer. Can we use this site? I think they're referring to the legislative site, or might be the legislative newsletter, to contact our state representative as an individual, and that would be yes.
Yeah, I showed that place in the legislative website, leg.wa.gov, where you can contact your legislator. And any citizen can do that. Any resident, let's say, can do that. Anybody, I suppose anybody anywhere in the world, because it's an open site. And but they ask you for your address. You'll have to put something in there. If you don't have an address inside Washington, it's not going to go anywhere. But you can, anytime you can do that. Also, I think their explicit email addresses are in that web page or in that website somewhere. You can send messages to them directly from your own email address with to their email address. And that is not a bad way to communicate with, especially your own legislator. You want to explain who you are explicitly when you contact that way, where you live, because they really don't have time to talk to everybody who might want to talk to them. So they will attend to their constituents. There's someone else typically that you can find. I could probably dig in there and try to find how to do this, but their legislative assistant who helps the legislator marshal the information for the bills going through and understands also the priorities for that legislator. You might get more information from the legislative assistant than the legislator, who's got a different orientation to their day. And so if you do email directly your legislators, try to find the legislative assistant and at least CC that person on your communication. You'll probably see it anyway, but I would say do that as well. It's not required, but
coming from a Coffee and Cards perspective, we got very used to writing your constituent and wished that there was an abbreviation for that word. But I'm thinking that just using that, whether you use the league position, and I'm seeing Brenda come back in, so I'm going to say indivisible Skagit or indivisible position. you're still responding or contacting them because you are a constituent. I'm really glad to hear about the legislative assistance, because that's important information that we've not had to pay attention to before, although we have had legislative assistance come to us and speak. Jim, you had a question? And then I think.
Yeah, I was going to comment on exactly the same thing you commented on. I've heard instructions that beginning a communication with the legislator, you begin, I am your constituent.
Yes, then otherwise they maybe tend to, if they don't see that word in there someplace, they it's inspired to read. Let's see, are there any other, I would like, Brenda, would you like to unmute? And tell us what happened. This is a local issue that we are interested in. And Brenda excused herself to go to the commissioners meeting and came back. And I think we need to hear what she has to say.
Yeah, it was a great disappointment. So there's a docket of issues that or changes to the comprehensive plan that was being adopted, ordinances being adopted today. And one of them was one where the planning staff and Skagit Land Trust had worked hard on protection for great blue heron colonies that really wasn't going to change a lot of development. It wasn't going to hinder much development because there's not much county development near these colonies. But long story short, the Planning Commission, which is heavily loaded with alt-right property rights people, didn't like the planning staff's recommendation for heron protection. So they recommended the county commissioners not adopt this ordinance that would protect large colonies. Last week it looked like, or a couple weeks ago, it looked like the commissioners were actually, Ron and Lisa were in favor of heronry protection, and they were for once going to go against the Planning Commission's recommendations. But in the meeting that just ended, as they were getting close, they were asking questions and getting close to wrapping it up, Ken Dahlstead jumped in and made a motion to adopt the amendments with the exception of the heronry protection one. And Ron seconded it. Lisa objected. She said, I'm going to vote against this, and, argued a bit, but they voted. So Ron and Ken, but it was really Ken's action that enabled it. It was very obviously, he's just so bitter and he's pulling a Trump move. He's just bitter about anybody who didn't, honor his desire to be in that position for life. So anyway, so that means all that work for the heronry protection and stuff is for naught, at least for now. I don't know if anybody has the heart to try again when there's a new commissioner in there, but Planning Commission definitely needs to be changed.
So that sounds to me like the right in the heart of what the local league should be taking action on, the part that's working environmental stuff, and is definitely a local issue, sounds to me. So you're doing the right thing, I think. And what they say in the legislature is people, especially on controversial items, it may take 5 years of introducing a bill before it gets any traction at all, because the legislators themselves have to get comfortable with the idea and understand what their constituents think of it. So hang in there for the herons.
I have to say, Lisa did make the comment, this is not what I want to be remembered for.
Yeah.
And that was pointed at Ken, who is, forced into retirement at the end of this session. So, it's definitely that. He did say there's some planning commissioners who are so upset about not being respected for their opinion that they're thinking of leaving the commission. Well, that's bullshit. They're going to stay in as long, kicking and screaming before they leave. So it's, anyway, that's a very sad decision today.
Thank you, Brenda. And I wanted her to share that because it is an example of two things. Local issue that maybe the league can, we need to figure out how, the league can take action on local issues, and the need for observers in our government agencies. Brenda took the time to go to a committee meeting this morning so that she could learn this news. And we're in the process of forming a league observer corps that will ask people to be observers in different meetings, like the Planning Commission, the hospital boards. And I mentioned those two because we've seen locally that we need to be watching, and then to be reporting very objectively, so that in case there's a need for action, then we can turn it into an action. But just, and hoping we can involve more people from not just our slant or whatever, but people in the community who should be taking an interest and need the education on what's happening in these various meetings. So that's a plug for Observer Corps on down the line. And I think it's probably time for us to, it's time for me to sing Coffee and Cards is over. And Coffee and Cards is going to be over. We're going on hiatus, vacation, going dark, paused for the foreseeable future until we can meet again in person. And then we need to evaluate, because we found this Zoom platform to be very, very, what's useful. You know, we can bring people from clear across the state. I'm looking down in the corner at Laura and I'm seeing, I can't find her again, from Whidbey Island. Maybe it's Leona. And Marilyn and Judy and Andy, and Abby, who's from, she's Snohomish, and she's probably finished with her coffee by now. She's had that great mug that she's been slowly emptying. Thank you for joining us. Please come back next week. Arnold, Jim has another comment, and I need to get back to Marty. So can I take Jim's comment first, Marty? Thank you.
Okay, I just want to ask Mr. Gibbins if he caught my note in the chat.
Well, let's see. I didn't. I wasn't looking. I was paying more. Was it up near the top or down at the bottom?
It's at the top and it's directed to you only.
Oh, let me see. Oh, here we go. Okay, you have some concern about environmental organizations leaning left, which may make.
Yeah, I just want to send you some information if you want to take it.
Sure. Yeah, and so, you know, I would reiterate again that our job at the League is not to follow the lead necessarily of the environmental organizations, because they do have the left-leaning label attached to them. And we, as the League, are trying hard to remain nonpartisan, but still maintain a value for facts and perspective and good governance and transparency and those kind of values. So what I value in the coalitions, even if it is a perceived as far to one side or another, is their perspective on something. So I understand the full range of what people are thinking about. You know, that's what one thing I value. And I don't get a lot of the right, the conservative side so much, but I do read some newsletters and things to get their flavor. And but what I find is on environmental issues that the organization, I do have to squint at things every once in a while, but they have the information typically that I need. They have the facts. And I just need to sort out, are the facts being spun in any way? And so I try to rely on a lot of different sources, like a lot of different news sources as well, to form opinions. And I still use the League Positions as the primary source. But I understand what you're saying about, you know, I guess, especially in this polarized environment, organizations just get labeled with a hard label, and it may or may not be accurate in all cases. But that's how I use a variety of sources as best I can. There's way more information than I can process, frankly.
Okay, thank you very much.
Question for, oh, I'm sorry. Edwina had one more comment or question. You're muted, dear.
Maybe this was discussed and I missed it. when we would send postcards, we had 72 postcards on an issue. When we send emails, how is that counted? Or can we trust that even goes to the person we're trying to reach?
Well, through the league action alert system, yes, it's going to your legislator, no doubt about it. It even pops up the pictures of the people who it's going to go to. And it is effective. It does work. I get responses back too, because I try to respond to as many of those action alerts as I can. And they have to handle all these comments, whether it's telephone, postcards, letters, or email. It's as you can imagine, it's easier for them to handle email. They use, I think, email filtering to put things into buckets. There was a question earlier about triaging, having the staff triaging the messages coming in. They get a lot of messages. Some of the members get more messages than others, frankly. They either have more responsibility in committees or something. I know my senator in the 6th and the 5th district, during the session, he adds an assistant on just to handle the deluge of communication coming in. And so the senator himself does not read everything, I'm sure. That the staff, I would hope, was summarizing these things and identifying particularly well-written or succinct, or rather, well thought out communications that they believe would represent the constituency's positions, but they can't, I don't see how they can read everything that's coming in. Now, some of the newer representatives might be able to, because they're just not getting as much email yet. But and I don't really know how they handle the postcards, because as I understand it, they're required to maintain a record of all the communications coming in now, so they may have to scan them or something, but we are adjusting, the issue chairs are adjusting how we communicate with the legislators too, a bit, given this insight that we're getting.
Is there any history then of how many, we're all voting for chocolate soda and we're sending emails. Is there any record then of the emails?
Well, as I understand it, the legislators have to keep a record of all that. They may not have to reveal how many was pro, how many was con chocolate sodas, but or their internal, but maybe they do. I really don't know about that. But theoretically, through some kind of a state level freedom of information, anybody could get those records and do their own summarizing. I don't know. that's beyond where I can take action myself.
Okay, thank you.
Brenda and I learned firsthand last year when we visited Norma Smith's office that her legislative aide was, "You're the one who sent the postcards." I felt like, because now they had the requirements for keeping track of who was contacting and why were more stringent, and it's going to be less easier for them to tag phone calls and emails. And I'm still in favor of postcards for a pat on the back and sending a hug. So something they could put on their bulletin board, which Dave Paul had. His first card from Coffee and Cards was written by Kathy Stockbridge, and it was on the bulletin board. He pointed to them. He has, every time I've seen him, he's mentioned the cards he gets, mainly because we thank him for supporting. So they need that pat on the back too. And if they have to catalog them or file them, so what? They can put them on their bulletin boards and they see them and like them.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent insight, that a thank you for a job well done postcard is really good, because they can scatter them around their coffee tables and their entryway and put them on the bulletin boards and hand them around. And yeah, it's a tangible thing, where email, you know how intangible that is.
And one more thing for a local issue where we started watching, Judy McCunis put in the chat reminding us that our local hospice is going to stay local and Bristol was told to go somewhere else. And so many of you showed up at the hospital commission meetings, and even if there were time confusions, and our local league president also spoke at both hospital commission meetings in the past week, and showing that watching, observing, and then taking action when needed can have results. So, yay. I think we need to stop. Marty, we thank you so much. And I know we didn't touch at what you're really passionate about, which is the environment. And we would so love to have you come back another time when there are things going through the legislature that maybe need some explanation or why we need to push for them. And we'd love to have you come back. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And people who were from out of our area, come back next week and we'll hear Stony Bird speak to us on public banking. Why do we need to learn about it? Why should we support it? And I think, Abby, is that your issue that you're interested in? Am I getting that correct?
Oh, I am working on redistricting with Allison.
Then you can explain a little bit about that too, if you come back, because we need some
Okay.
help with that too. And you can
Sure.
maybe put in a plug for the redistricting 101, the mapping, and the speak up schools. Would you like,
Okay.
if you can come back next week?
Yeah, so would you like me to invite Karen? Because she's the one who's working on.
Crowley, please.
Yes.
do. Yes.
Okay, sure, I'll do that.
And Laura, thank you so much for inviting people from your Benton Franklin League. And for the regulars, thank you for showing up. Come back again. I'm not mentioning coffee and cards anymore. We're now the Skagit League of Women Voters Action Group. We can do a lot of good, and I'm excited about it. Thank you so much, and
Merry
have a good
Christmas.
holiday. See you next
See
week.
you later. Bye-bye. Merry
Yeah.
Christmas. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Happy
Thanks,
Hanukkah
Todd.
Kwanzaa Mass.
Happy here. Thanks,
Happy
Santa.
Hanukkah Kwanzaa Mass.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Say that again, unless he left. Say it again.
Happy Hanukkah Kwanzaa Mass.
There we go. Happy Kwanzaa.
Yes, we had a wonderful Hanukkah and we're looking forward to the rest of the holiday
All
season.
right.
Yes, thank you. Lynn, I'm glad you're here. As you can see, we're shifting. For those of you who don't know, Lynn is the Skagit County Democrats chair, and she's someone whose opinion I value a lot, and I'm so glad to see her here too, because you can see we're changing and going to a more neutral position in a way, but we're not abandoning values that have kept us going for the last 3.5 years. It's just, I feel like resources are there and I'm really wanting to take advantage of them.
As I'm listening to this, Carol, I'm thinking that you should go on the agenda every month and provide a report of action items and bills to keep us abreast of what's going on.
And okay, through the weekly newsletter or monthly. Okay, thank you. We'll do that. Yes.
Well, no, to actually give a report at the meetings as well.
Okay.
But yes, in the newsletter also.
Yes. Okay. So
Okay.
Alberta, thank you for joining us for our first time. It's nice to have you here. Andrea, again, I love that picture of Guatemala.
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, everyone.
Yeah, we can't say it quite like Dawn does, but yeah.
No.
Melikaliki maka haoli maka hiki ho. Yes.
Nice.
from Hawaii.
Thank you, Edwina.
Sally, nice to see you. I just know your front porch so well. I don't really know your kitchen. Nice to see that. Yeah, Jim, thank you for being here too. And I forgot to ask. You guys think it's okay if I just have been recording this? Brenda reminded me that, I rely on Eric to do that, but yeah, so good. All right, so we're done recording and I'll just stop because